Richard Roeper, kind enough to join us, movie reviewer, Fox 32 TV in Chicago. Richard back on the program. Good morning, Richard.
Good morning, Dan. You were talking about dressing up. I've been dressed up as my favorite character in all the movies this year, so I've been the Danish girl the last couple of weeks. It's quite a look. Eddie Redmayne. Fantastic costume.
All right, we'll get to the best movies of the year in a moment here, but let me start with Star Wars here. How big is it? Is it going to out big the expectations?
Yeah, it really is. It'll make over $200 million, and that's just domestically. You know, one of the reasons, Dan, this thing is probably going to end up being the all-time box office champ is it has universal, international, global appeal. Not all American movies translate that well overseas, but everybody loves Star Wars. I mean, it's got that kind of appeal. So it'll end up making probably $1.5 billion.
Is it a good movie?
It's a really good movie. I'm not, the hugest Star Wars geek. I can't tell you who, like, Darth Sith Nihilus the Seventh is or whatever, but I do like the franchise. And, they got the right guy in J.J. Abrams. He's the guy, co-creator of Lost, and he resuscitated the Star Trek franchise. So he's a guy that, he honors the legacy of the original 3 movies from the late 70s and early 80s, but also creates a whole new story. So for the hardcore fans, there's all these great little touchstones and callbacks to the original franchise. But then it also works as a standalone movie.
How's Harrison Ford?
Harrison Ford's, really good in this. Harrison Ford is a great movie star, but he's not always a great actor. He could be a little stiff. If you go and look at the original Star Wars movies, I mean, his character's kind of a guy that's not the most friendly guy and the friendliest guy in the world. But he has a lot more fun, I think, playing Han Solo as a guy who's in his 70s. One of the cool things they did, Dan, with this movie is it's set 30 years after the Return of the Jedi, so it makes sense that Harrison Ford and Carrie Fisher and Mark Hamill's characters are 30 years older.
Do I have to see previous Star Wars movies to like this or understand it, appreciate it?
It's going to help a lot. It's going to enhance the viewing experience. But even if you've never seen any of the Star Wars movies and you wanted to see a great adventure with amazing special effects and really terrific top-line acting, it works as a standalone film as well.
What about the Concussion movie with Will Smith comes out on Christmas Day? Is it a good movie? Great movie?
It's a good movie. It's not quite a great movie. I wish they had actually spent more time focusing on the concussion and the investigation into it and the pathologist in Pittsburgh who discovered the syndrome. They get a little bit too much into the melodrama and the romance involving Will Smith's character. But the football stuff, there's an actor by the name of David Morse. And if you look him up, you've seen him in a million things. And he plays Mike Webster, of course, the Hall of Fame great Pittsburgh Steelers center, who died at the age of 50 and was one of the first players that really shed a light on what happened to these players, that kind of post-concussion syndrome. And the scenes involving him are just absolutely devastating. Yeah,
when he's gluing his teeth back in, and you're right. I mean, it's an arresting shot when you see Mike Webster doing that. The best movies. Okay, what's the best movie that made the most money so far?
In the entire year? It's probably the Pixar movie, Inside Out, which is one of their best animated films ever. I rank it right up there with Toy Story and Finding Nemo. It's a great film, and it also, of course, did hundreds of millions of dollars.
All right. The best movie this year will be?
Oh, it's tough. Right now I'm still putting together my list. There's a movie called The Revenant with Leonardo DiCaprio. That is going to be in my top 5 for sure. What I also really love was a movie called The Big Short, which is about the housing crisis of the late 2000s, but it's actually really funny and devastating. Christian Bale, Ryan Gosling, terrific cast, and really funny. And it's one of those old-fashioned movies where the dialogue's just going so quick. I loved it.
Yeah, Steve Carell is also in that movie as well. Yeah. The movie that didn't live up to the hype.
Oh, you know what? There's one opening this weekend, and I thought I was really looking forward to. It's called Sisters with Amy Poehler and Tina Fey.
Yeah.
You can't go wrong with those two, right? I mean, they're great hosts of the Globes. They've done so many great things together, and it's just dreadful. It's terrible. It's so beneath them. It's like cheap humor, physical humor, shtick. They're wrestling in the mud. And I'm like, well, I guess they were due for a strikeout after so many hits. But I was really looking forward to that, and it's just horrible.
But don't you think that there was this turn after maybe Seth Rogen or Will Ferrell, like you could go blue, and it kind of changed people and what they were doing, that they didn't play it as safe, that you could. I don't know. Maybe I'm seeing it differently. Like Neighbors with Seth Rogen. I mean, that they were pushing the envelope, and they did it well. But it feels like sometimes when it's in the hands of somebody else, it's not going to go well.
Yeah, you're right. I think it probably goes back then to the first Hangover movie, which is a hard R movie that made like $300 million, and then first Ted, which was very funny and bawdy. So now I think a lot of people are saying, hey, we can go hard R and still, appeal to the mainstream. Sometimes it worked. I thought Trainwreck with Amy Schumer did a great job of it. Bridesmaids did a great job of it. But you're right. A lot of times now people are like, oh, we'll just go blue. We'll go with the nudity. We'll go with the cheap jokes. And if it's not well done, then it's just a piece of garbage like Sisters.
What did you think of Creed?
I loved it. I thought after Rocky Balboa, which was almost 10 years ago now, that they had done a fitting end of the franchise. But I love the way they kind of take the next generation. Michael B. Jordan is on the verge of becoming a breakout movie star. And Stallone is going to get a Best Supporting Actor nomination for his work as, of course, Rocky Balboa. He was that good in it.
I think people are begrudgingly accepting Creed. Like I don't know what it is. Maybe it's Stallone that they're going, oh, I'm so tired of this. And then I think people came out going, boy, it's a whole lot better than I thought it was going to be.
Yeah, that's one you talk about living up to that. That's one that I kind of felt like, they're pushing it here. And I've had a lot of people come up to me and say, why do I want to see this movie? And again, it's sort of like The Force Awakens. If you've seen all the other Rockies, it's going to enhance the experience. But it's just a good film, solid. A lot of great references to the original Rocky franchise. But it also just stands alone. It works so well. And the first time Stallone kind of comes out of the shadows at his restaurant in Philadelphia and he's in that character, both Harrison Ford and Sylvester Stallone are playing characters they created 40 years ago, and you rarely see that in the movies.
Yeah, in fact, Burgess Meredith, sometimes he used to join our show when he was still alive. And, in fact, we have a clip of Burgess Meredith here and what he said the last time he was with us.
Well, what are we waiting for? You can't win, Rock.
What'd you think of that, Richard?
No, Walter Matthau.
Walter Matthau? Well, Luke.
I like that. Come on, man. My favorite was the first Rocky when his first fight was against Spider Rico. Remember that? And the next day he goes to the gym and Mickey goes, "Oh yeah, fight!" And Rocky says, "Spider Rico, you should have been Spider Rico's a bum."
That's a good Mick there. Hey, Richard, good to talk to you again. Thanks for joining us.
All right. Thanks, Dan.
All right. Richard Roeper, movie reviewer. His website, richardroeper.com. And he works for Fox 32 in Chicago, reviewing movies.